The first questions or statements we're going to get briefly is from Dylan Avery and Jason Burmis. These are two of the gentlemen that made Loose Change 1 and 2. And, of course, Loose Change 2 is a 9/11 film that sent shockwaves across the country. Jason, go ahead.
It's on? Yeah. I'm going to make this as brief as possible. Good afternoon. My name is Jason Burmis. I'm lucky enough to be part of the Louder Than Words production team. Basically, before we present evidence from the final cut, I'd just like to go over the movement for a moment. Previously, we've all been told we're crazy, we're nuts, they would never do something like this. Then we began to hear that's interesting, or they knew. Shortly after that, we began to hear, yeah, they did it, but I'm only one person. I ask all of you, do we look like one person? Now the mainstream media is being forced to cover this movement due in large part to our tenacity and ingenuity in spreading the truth through emails, flyers, films, and strategic conferences like this one. So where do we go from here? In my eyes, there is nowhere else to be other than Ground Zero on September 11th, 2006, on Monday morning. We will not be there to scream the truth. Instead, we will be there to honor the memories of the fallen with both respect and solidarity. We will be wearing shirts that say, investigate 9/11. We will have signs that say, we need a new investigation, 9/11 truth now, and ask questions, demand answers. We will be there to inform the firemen, the police, the family members, and the citizens that are agreeing to this information by giving away tens of thousands of our DVDs. We will be addressing everybody as sir and ma'am as to be as polite as possible. This is the 5th anniversary of the lie that bases all of our foreign and domestic policy since then. We can no longer let this stand. Every major media outlet in the world is going to be in attendance, so if they want a wide shot, they will have to cover us. I am encouraging everybody to bring a camcorder to this event in case the government decides to provocateur it. If someone gets out of line, becomes disruptive, we need to turn cameras on them and say, stop it, you do not represent us. We will not allow them to squelch the truth this year.
Jason?
This is it. In closing, I would just like to say that I am doing this because I love my country, I love my family, and I love my friends. And anyone who doubts this information can go to seeloosechange.com right now and watch it for free. Now I'd like to introduce a man who has literally changed the minds of millions, my friend Dylan Avery.
Oh, stop. Thank you, everybody. I realize we're very pressed for time. We have a lot to get through, so I'm not going to take as much as I thought I was going to. I want to thank you all for showing up. Alex has put on by far the most successful, the biggest, and I think the most entertaining and most effective conference we've seen to this date. And I want to applaud you, Alex.
Thanks. Thank you.
I just want to put that out there because I mean it. I didn't want to waste time up here, but essentially, I started this whole thing as a kid who knew absolutely nothing. I knew nothing about the United States government and other governments and their long history of false flag-sponsored terrorist attacks. I mean, United States government, Nazi Germany, they did both the same thing. I didn't know about any of these things. All I knew is that September 11th happened while I was in economics in high school. It was something that I knew I didn't really comprehend fully, and I felt like there was something that I didn't know. Apart from that, I didn't go into, as some of you may know, I went into this with the idea that it was fictional, that our government was not behind 9/11, it was just simply a crazy idea. I did my homework, it turned out to be true. So over the course of two and a half years, it evolved from a feature-length film into a documentary. You all know the boring story.
Well, Dylan, thank you so much for being here. And you're going to be presenting today. Thank you. Yeah. Now, I see a lot of familiar faces up the front. I want to get a few more comments. Barry Zwicker's here, media critic and also a journalist from Canada. I want him just to say a quick word. And then after that, simply put, we're going to have quick, simple questions, not because I know there'll be a bunch of political statements. I can see that lined up. I want a few questions for our presenters. We've only got a few minutes left. Barry?
I'd like to be very specific. I want to pick up on what Webster Tarpley said about the left gatekeepers. Chapter 5 of my book, which you can buy an order for, which you can pick up an order form for, is called "The Shame of Noam Chomsky and the Left Gatekeepers." Now, yes, they should be held to account. We could be a lot further ahead had these left gatekeepers done their job. But what I want to say to you today, I want to read off a list of these gatekeepers, and anybody here who is a subscriber to or a follower of any of these media, I ask you, either send them an article or send of your own, or send them an article that they can reprint, or send them an article idea, and demand that they pay attention to this. Here's the list. Just if you have anything to do with any of these, do this action now. It is The Nation, David Corn specifically, Amy Goodman at Democracy Now!, Chip Burlett, Senior Analyst at Political Research Associates, David Barsamian of Alternative Radio, Michael Albert of Zed Magazine, Alexander Coburn, Norman Solomon, The Progressive, Mother Jones, Alternate.org, Global Exchange, PBS, South End Press, Public Research Associates, Fair Extra. It's a wonderful magazine. I subscribe to it. Counterspin, Columbia Journalism Review, Deep Dish TV, Working Assets, Molly Ivins, Ms. Magazine, Interpress Service, MoveOn.org, and also Greg Palast and Air America. Now, I'm not speaking against these people. I'm saying it's time they woke up, but we have to help wake them up. So I urge you, contact them and ask them to wake up. It could make a huge difference.
Thank you, Barry. I'm going to get a minute comment from Jimmy Walter, the philanthropist that spent over $7 million on TV, radio, and print ads exposing 9/11 as an inside job.
I have a $1 million challenge to the official story that no newspaper in New York will print. I was protesting outside the New York Times. They called the cops. They threatened me. They lied about what I was doing. The New York Times is in on this and is actively suppressing it. 2, I'm paying $25,000 under the Freedom of Information Act to get the full NIST information that will be available to all of you soon. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. Chris Hamill for the Martlet for the University of Victoria, British Columbia. Just a quick question here, open to all the panel. Clearly this goes beyond the idea of just Cheney and Bush. It's systemic, it's global. Within academic circles, there's a lot of academics who believe that this movement could lead to a systemic collapse of the social contract, let's say, within the United States and legitimacy of government. How do you avoid the tradition that when governments have collapsed in history, that there's a massive power vacuum?
Let me comment on that. Our government's already collapsed. A shadow government controlled by private corporate interest has already seized this nation. So we don't have a choice. It has collapsed. The republic is basically on its knees, and they're about to slit its throat. Gentlemen, you want to comment? We need to move on.
I just want
gentlemen, go ahead.
Can I finish the question,
election after election using electronic voting machines. It can't get much worse. They've learned the lesson of Stalin. It doesn't matter who casts the votes. What matters is who counts them.
William Sloane Coffin in his dying days endorsed 9/11 Truth and said it could be an open door to social change. Rabbi Lerner of the Tikkun movement has said pretty much the same thing. 9/11 Truth basically knocks down the controlled environment, opens up real politics.
How do you prevent, though, when you're talking about the idea of a global elite, how do you prevent them from trying to fill in that power vacuum? There you go.
Duty is ours, consequence belongs to God. We do the right thing. Okay, that's what we do. We do the right thing, and letting this criminal group run things, I mean, we know that's bad. So we're doing the right thing. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Matthew Horton Woodson. I'm running for United States Congress as well. I plan to be with Mr. Bowman in the 110th Congress, and I would encourage everybody to open up their checkbooks to Mr. Bowman as well as the other candidates that are running.
Fantastic. Sir, do you have a question? We're almost out of time.
I would say that I think that everybody needs to educate all the 3,000 candidates that are running currently in this country right now. So that's an action item that I would like to pass on to people. Thank you.
Comments on that, gentlemen? Would you like to comment, Bob, on educating candidates?
Absolutely. I'm working on that. We have a network of candidates around the country, and Matt Woodson, who just spoke, is one of them. He's Oklahoma's 5th District, and good for him.
Great. All right. Okay. Would either one of you like to comment on? Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. The question is, if there are only 2 legal ways to create change under the authority of the Constitution, Congress or Convention, and all the state applications are registered with Congress right now, why don't you guys start talking about the time that it's time to have an Article 5 convention?
Okay, thank you for the question. Let me comment
CC2.org, charliecharlie2.org. Thanks.
Thanks a lot for the plug. What I'm trying to state here is, historically, constitutional conventions have been good for the elite, bad for the people. I'm not saying it's a tool we can't use. It's just historically, in the last 100 years, especially with the Con of 1913, it's been very bad, and they've staged these. If they're stealing local elections, can you imagine what they'll do with the Constitutional Convention? But I'd like to hear the panel briefly talk about some type of Constitutional Convention.
This man has imposed his interpretation of the law 750 times. He has usurped to himself the powers of the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive together. If you don't see a dictatorship when it's right there staring you in the face, this idea that we're going to proceed in a gentlemanly way in accordance with the Constitution this administration has already suspended is simply absurd.
Yeah.
We don't need to change our Constitution. We need to follow the one we've got.
Yes.
My name is Lynn Pence. I'm one of the founders of 9/11truthla.us and a convener of the Citizens Grand Jury on the crimes of 9/11. And we are convening another Citizens Grand Jury on the weekend of September 11th, on the 10th. We asked the entire nation, we asked C-SPAN to not only cover the whitewash of the 9/11 Commission hearings, which, quite simply, refused to consider evidence contrary to the Bush administration's official explanation or distorted evidence to conform to it. It ignored obvious suspects by failing to consider who had the means, motive, and opportunity to actually accomplish all that took place. And they determined it was outside their mandate to establish any legal responsibility or any accountability for the blatant disregard of standard operating procedures and the inexplicable negligence that permitted, if not caused, the atrocity known as 9/11.
Thank you so much. Do you have a question for the panel?
Well, yes. On the Fifth Amendment indicated that we, the people, are essentially the fourth branch of government. And we are calling on the people, not of the United States, but of the world, to have their governments hold this government accountable for the crimes of 9/11. And we're asking, and so I'm just asking the members of the panel, would you endorse, be a part of our Citizens Grand Jury, and stand for the reestablishment of the Fifth Amendment right for presentments, which are independent grand jury investigations and findings?
Absolutely.
Grand juries are a very effective tool.
We also call upon the district attorneys and the attorneys general in the states in which these crimes occurred to pursue the evidence. We'll present witnesses and expert testimony, documents, records, studies in support of it.
They brought Bill Clinton in, who I don't even like. Get that straight. They brought him in over supposedly lying about Paula Jones for a grand jury. Cheney and Bush and the rest of them need to be brought into a real grand jury, and you can do that at the state or federal level, so start pushing. All we need is somebody like Jim Garrison.
Yeah, go to 911truthla.us. You'll get a sample of the presentments, the findings, and take that to your local grand juries. Thank you very much.
We've got 3 minutes left. I'm going to try to jam in 3 questions quickly.
One thing on this. We have Chavez of Venezuela, Mahathir of Malaysia have talked about an independent international truth commission modeled on the Russell Tribunal of Vietnam. That is the way you can break the back of the myth. And these citizens' grand juries are useful tools in an international propaganda effort leading up to an independent truth commission worldwide.
And I would just like to state on the record, the 9/11 hoax has been exposed. The WMD hoax has been exposed. And we're going to continue to expose all of these hoaxes. Go ahead, sir.
I'm Ken Knutson with 9/11 Truth of Arizona. It seems to us in Arizona and more broadly that we don't want to disrupt the rest of our lives. We want to get back to what we were doing before all this happened. We have 2 years to get this done, and then we can go back to having a real life again. So I want to get your comments on why that's important. We need to totally discredit this administration, and then we can go back to having a nice country.
That the people that carried out 9/11 control the leadership of the Democratic Party as well. I mean, you've got to understand. I mean, we've got Democrats jumping up even higher to attack Iran. So we need the left to really wake up to how disgusting their leadership is.
What we need is a legitimate election this year, this November. My great fear is they're going to try an event before that to interrupt it. If Americans vote their conscience, we'll reconstitute Congress, and we can help restore democracy to the United States of America.
All right. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Bowman talked about convincing America one person at a time. I'm a salesman, and I enjoy selling people on this at a grassroots level. One of the most frequent objections, or what I would call objections, you get from people who believe the official story when you're pitching them on this is, well, what happened to the original flights and the original passengers? You've touched on Flight 177. Dave Von Kleist has talked about Flight 175. I'd just like to hear the panel comment on what they believe happened to the original flights and the passengers, and what's the best way to respond to that when you're trying to pitch someone?
That's a long question. That'll be our final question. Let me just briefly state my view on this. My films don't get into the Pentagon. They don't get into areas that are open for debate. I stick with NORAD standing down, CIA drills, bin Laden being CIA, public officials being warned not to fly, and the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of points that show that the official story is a fraud, the bombs in the buildings, the controlled demolitions, Building 7. It's like police go and they find some guy who's got 10 dead bodies buried in his backyard. And he'll go to the electric chair, never telling people how he did it, why he did it, but they have all the evidence. They know he did it. Okay? And you can convict them. So clearly, with the evidence we have, we could go into a court of law and prove that 9/11 wasn't carried out by who they claim it was. Then we can prove, without a shadow of a doubt, that criminal elements of the global military-industrial complex intelligence system were clearly involved orchestrating this. So I would challenge people to focus on the huge meat and potato issues that we have that are incontrovertible. That's my statement on that issue. Gentlemen, closing comments on that, and we will dismiss this section of the conference, and I want to thank C-SPAN for being here.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, folks. Let's give them a round warm of applause. They did a great job, and so did you. So did you. Thank you. You can learn more at American Scholars Symposium.org. That's the organization to put that on, my organization. AmericanScholars.org. AmericanScholarsSymposium.org. Thank you, Bob. Great job. Great being here with you guys. Thank you.
Now Vice President Dick Cheney speaks at the Gerald Ford Journalism Awards in Washington.